Hello, my name is Dr. Allie Baumgartner, and I am the Paleontology Collections Manager here at the Sternberg Museum of Natural History. And though my day job is taking care of fossil animals, today I'm going to talk to you about something a little bit closer to my heart, plants. Specifically, we're going to talk about plant defenses. So the thing that everyone knows about plants is that they can't move. If something is bothering a plant, they can't just get up and get out of the way. And the cool thing about plants is that they know when you're touching them. Plants can detect touch. So it's not like it's a surprise if something starts chewing on them. So because plants can't move, they have to come up with a couple of other creative ways to protect themselves. So the first line of defense for plants is to protect the perimeter. They'll use all sorts of different methods to just protect the outside of the plant so that things can't chew on them. And that can come in a variety of forms. Sometimes it's merely distracting herbivores from the important parts of the plant. Because plants do want some animals to pay attention to them, right? That's how pollination works. Plants will want insects to come visit their flowers so they can reproduce. Or they want animals to come visit their fruit so that they can also reproduce. The only time that plants really want animals around is for reproduction. But plants don't always want all of these animals around. So one way that they can defend themselves is with physical deterrents. And some of these are really simple, just by doing things to their leaves. So they can have this waxy coating on the outside. They might have cutin, which covers the outside of the leaf. And then sometimes they have things that are a little bit more exciting. Normally roses don't have thorns, roses have prickles, tell your friends. But normally you would see physical deterrents on roses like these. Here in Hayes, we have probably my favorite tree, the honey locust, Gleditsia tricanthus. And on it, they have these huge spines, absolutely huge. You might be able to see on some of these that these spines can grow spines off of their spines. And these are triggered by herbivory. So if the plant is damaged or if an herbivore bothers it, these trees will start to grow these spines. If you've ever seen an elephant in an acacia tree, same sort of thing. Giraffes have really flexible tongues so they can get around these spines. So this is just another way that plants can defend themselves. In addition, plants can use things like resin or gum. So if a plant is damaged in some way, very often they will ooze resin out of their pores so they can entrap whatever was bothering them. So if you've ever seen Jurassic Park and they had the insect in the amber, that's just a tree defending itself from a predator. Because fun fact, herbivory is just predation, but the prey can't move. So keep that in mind. So if that doesn't work and the plant can't defend itself physically, it's got to get a little bit more creative, and it will resort to chemical warfare. Plants can get really nasty with the things that they use for chemical warfare. So there are three main types of compounds, and I'm only going to be talking about two of them today. So there are nitrogen-containing compounds. So that's going to be like alkaloids, amino acids, things like that. And I'll get into what that means. Or terpenes, which are terpenoids. Again, it's a chemical. We'll get into that in a second. And there are two ways that this chemical warfare can happen. Either these compounds can be induced or constituent. So that means if it's constituent, this is always going to be toxic. It is always like that all of the time. If it's induced, that means that this is a reaction to predation. This is not always a toxic plant, only if it gets bothered. So let's talk first about some of my favorite toxins, the terpenes. So those are going to be things that are volatile. That means you can smell them. So essential oils are plant toxins. They use that to deter herbivores. And just to be clear, just because a deterrent may work on one group of animals, say insects, that doesn't mean it's going to bother us. Because, for example, caffeine, that's a toxin. Strychnine, that's a toxin, that's a poison, we know that. But cocaine and nicotine, these are all plant toxins. So the reason your dog can't have chocolate is for the same reason that insects really can't have it either. It's toxic to them. One of my favorite plant toxins is called a Phytoexison. And what that means is that it is a plant steroid that specifically targets the steroids that insects make to molt. And instead of allowing the insect to grow normally, the plant will trigger molting in the insect and it will mature itself to death. Which I think is just a fantastic way to remind people that yes, plants go hard. They can't go anywhere, so they're gonna make you regret showing up and messing with them. Alkaloids are another type. There are non-protein amino acids. So basically they're amino acids that the plant makes that it doesn't make into a protein. But if an organism eats it, it may be mistakenly incorporated into proteins in that organism. An example of this are geraniums and Japanese beetles. So if a Japanese beetle eats a geranium, it will eat this amino acid that will paralyze the Japanese beetle within 30 minutes of eating it. And then the Japanese beetle is paralyzed for multiple hours. And after that time, the Japanese beetle would recover and be fine. But normally in that amount of time, something comes and eats the beetle. So if you want to help with Japanese beetles in your garden, you can plant some geraniums. So all of these plant toxins are secondary metabolites. That means that they are not necessary in any way for reproduction or making energy or anything like that. But they are byproducts of that process, and they protect the things that do make energy and do cause reproduction. And as I mentioned, these secondary metabolites, these compounds, these chemical compounds that will protect the plant, are either induced or constituent. So if they are induced, the process behind that can go in one of two ways. So I don't know if you know this, but plants can actually talk to each other. So if you've ever smelled fresh cut grass, that smell that smells so good to us, that's literally the plant telling other plants around it that something is coming and eating it. And that is an induced response. So that means that when you go over the grass with your lawnmower and you start cutting up the leaves, the plant will have a reaction to that. It will induce these compounds to warn its neighbors that something is coming. And to be fair, it's grass. There's not much it can do about it. But these messages can come in a couple of different ways. It can allow other plants to prepare. So that may allow them to induce their own secondary compounds so they can be prepared for what's ever coming. Sometimes when plants will induce these metabolites, they'll be making their own poisons. Sometimes the message is not for other plants, but instead for the predators of whatever is feeding on them. So again, that wouldn't work in the case of the lawnmower. But if, say, an aphid is eating your plant, the plant may induce a compound that would bring in ladybugs to come and eat it. So plants can talk to each other. So just a friendly reminder, you may think very little of the plants around us, but plants know you're there. Plants can feel touch, so you're not creeping up on anybody. Plants can move if they want to. If you've ever seen a sensitive plant, the plant is closing in on itself to try to deter a predator from coming and bothering it. Plants can talk to each other. They can either send signals that other plants can pick up. In some instances, plants can even share these compounds in their roots with each other. Plants are a community. Because they can't get up and move if something is bothering them, they have to work together. They have to communicate with each other in order to protect themselves. So, if you ever think that a plant is pathetic and weak, look at this thing, it can't even move, it gets eaten so easily, maybe think a little bit harder about all of the creative ways that plants are trying to defend themselves. And let's be real, humans are just taking advantage of them. We are using their caffeine so that we can stay up late. We're using our quinine so that we can protect ourselves. So let's give a little bit of respect to all of the different plant defenses that they give us. So thanks for letting me teach you a little bit more about plants today. See you next time.
Thanks for joining us in A New Way to Museum with the Sternberg Museum of Natural History. If you enjoyed this video, like it and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell for notifications when we release a new video. Support us on Patreon for early access and exclusive content. You can also follow us on all our social media. Links are found in the description. Thanks for watching, and follow your curiosity to new discoveries.